Welcome back to the Be Powerful podcast. I'm your host, Jess, and I'm super excited because today I get to share with you an interview with my friend, Jillian Teta. This is our first interview on the show, so yay for Jillian. Thanks for coming on. Very excited to share this episode because we talk a lot about stress. We talk about how to balance stress, how to even feel what stress feels like in your body, which is a really important thing for us to tune into. We talk about digestive health and gut microbiome. And we talk about seasons of life. It's a really cool episode. So even if you are someone who is not necessarily dealing with digestive health issues, I want you to listen in because Jillian is just such a calming presence. Whenever I see her in person, I've known Jillian for about 5 years now. We met amongst some online entrepreneur events and through a mutual friend, Jill Coleman. And every time I see Jillian and talk with her, she's just such a cool, calm presence. And I think that's kind of perfect for someone in her field that helps you to de-stress your body physically and hormonally. And so I can't wait to share this episode. I do want you to know that you can find out more about what Jillian does online at jillianteta.com. And there you can find education on many different digestive issues that you might be having. There are schools on colitis, on bladder, on Crohn's, on SIBO. And so if you have been dealing with any sort of digestive health issues and you want more education on what to do to feel your best, I think this is a perfect place for you to go. Jillian just opened up her De-Stress Your Gut Academy, which started this week. I'm not sure if it's still open, but even if it's not, I want you to go check it out and maybe get on her wait list for next time she opens it. Before we launch into the podcast, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping and share with you the exciting news that the Be Powerful Metabolic Reset program is going to be open for new members. We're going to start on Monday, April 29th with a new group. I'm just wrapping up week 13 with the current group. And let me tell you, the results have been amazing. They're all across the board, actually, because when people come into this program, what's really neat about it is we all have our own history and background with exercise, with health, and with yo-yo dieting. And so what's really fun about this program is there's a really nice group feel, but a lot of one-on-one support from me. So here's what you get to learn in this program. You get to learn how to dial into your hormones and how to balance your hormones so that you feel your best, but so that you're also able to achieve the results that you're looking for. So many times we go on diets and we never really achieve what we're looking for. Maybe we lose weight, but we don't lose fat. Maybe we get smaller, but we don't change our body shape. Maybe we get smaller, but we actually feel like crap in the process. I'm going to teach you how to feel your best in your body, which is an amazing sense of self-care, but I also want to help you change your relationship with food and exercise. So as much as I'd love to call this a fat loss program, it's so much more than that. Are the women in this program getting exceptional fat loss results? Yes, but it is so much more than that. We talk about stress, we talk about movement, we talk about meals, we talk about how to integrate all of these healthy habits into your life so that they make sense for you. And you can stop that cycle of starting and stopping, and yo-yo dieting until the cows come home. We're done with that, right? So if you're interested in this program, the best way to let me know is to email me at jess@jessicaorr.com. And we can hop on the phone or we can email back and forth and we can just determine if this is the right fit for you, because it might not be. But if it is the right fit for you, you're going to want to get into this soon because we start on February 29th. And just because we're coming into the spring, I'm not quite sure when I'm going to open up the program again. I am going to tailor back some of my online programs in the summer months. I will still be podcasting, but this is my last summer with my 2 little guys before my youngest goes into kindergarten. So I am going to be potentially scaling back a teeny bit on these programs in particular. So if you're interested in this fat loss program and this hormone balance program, this is the time to get into it. You'll want to email jess@jessicaorr.com and we can chit chat about if it's the right fit for you. All right, well, that's that. And let's launch into this amazing interview with Jillian Teta. This is the Be Powerful podcast, where we're focused on stepping into our power and living the full lives we were meant to live. Hey, I'm your host, Jess Orr, and I want to inspire you to cultivate self-trust and confidence so that you begin taking action within your life. If you're like me and self-growth is your religion, This is going to be the place for you to share in real, honest conversations around how to make the shifts you've been dreaming about. I'm a mom, business owner, and strength and hormone coach, and I work with women each and every day who aspire to embody the strength to step out of their old narratives and into new realities. Here in this show, we're going to cover things like fat loss nutrition, strength training, hormone balance, mom life, business, positive mindset, and other topics that will guide you to living your most powerful life. Are you ready, Mama? Let's jump in. Okay, so here we are. I'm here with my friend Jillian Teta. I'm so super excited to be talking to you today. So Jillian is an integrative physician. She's a digestive health expert. She's a creator of Fix Your Digestion, and she also is the author of a book that I buy and give to many members of my family and friends. It's called Natural Solutions for Digestive Health. So Jillian, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, hey, Jess. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Of course. So the first thing I want to ask you, the name of this podcast is the Be Powerful Podcast. And my business is all about helping women to find their confidence, step into their power, to know themselves more. I want to know from you, as a strong woman who's owning your worth and your body and mind and your profession, what makes you feel the most powerful right now?
That's a great question. So for me, really, it's literally slowing down my brain and like dropping into the moment, like not stressing about all the things I didn't do in the past or like all the weird, awkward stuff that happened in the past, not projecting that out into the future, right? Like, so really just like slowing myself down and dropping into the moment is what makes me feel the most powerful.
I love that. In your, not to be a dork and start quoting you immediately, but in the natural solutions for digestive health, you talked about this progressive, I'm not going to say it right, but the progressive calming or the progressive reset, where it's like you're dropping into your body and you're doing a little bit of a meditation.
Yeah.
And just the relationship between your emotional stress and your digestive stress.
Oh, yes.
What's a really great way that you drop into yourself? Like, is there a standard practice you use?
Well, for me, I really try to get very still mentally, and I really just say like connect with the present now. Like it's almost like a little mini mantra. So it's like connecting with the present in this second, meaning again, like not projecting into the future and not projecting into the past.
Yeah.
Or if that's not working, I like to go for a walk. So for me, like walking is very meditative and helps me just like slow down. But for me, like that power comes from not letting my brain completely hijack my emotional well-being.
Oh, I love that so much. I think I'm on this quest of, I call it like self-growth is my religion. And I feel like as I get older, obviously this is something that I wasn't doing well in my 20s. But as I get older, I find that I'm much more able to drop into the present and be like, so actually, like, you're taking on a victim mindset, or I catch myself in my bullshit really quick, and it's really nice to feel present enough to be able to switch that thinking quicker instead of having to, we can all look back and we can all say like that trial, that thing that I went through was really hard for me, but here's how I've grown. It's easy to look back, but I'm loving that, like, I can drop into it like when I need to. It's not always immediate, but I think it's kind of, one good thing about getting older is that ability to kind of like check your own bullshit and just kind of realize like, oh, I'm projecting or I'm living in this past stuff,
Yeah. Well, also as we get older, we have more opportunity to practice, right? So it's like we just have more opportunities simply to practice if we want to. And I think that speaks to like having the awareness, right? So it's like the awareness is the first piece where you can like use that negative, emotion or mindset or thought as almost like a little alarm clock to then check yourself or redirect yourself or to use a tool to like drop back in. Definitely.
Totally. And be like, what's going on right here?
Yeah.
Will you give us your background? So tell us tell us a little bit, because I was just going to start talking about metabolic effect, but I'd love to talk about your professional history and kind of where you're at right now.
Okay. So I'm a naturopathic physician. I've been in practice for 12 years. I started out in the clinic, just sort of seeing everybody for everything. And what started to show up more and more were folks with digestive distress. Like that was the bulk of what I was seeing. And so I began to like treat folks for digestive distress and got fabulous results. One thing sort of led to another. Along that time was when, Facebook was kicking up and stuff. So we got on social media. We started Metabolic Fact. Like I joined Metabolic Fact. One thing led to another. I got a book deal and I wrote Natural Solutions for Digestive Health with my co-author, Jeanette Bessinger. She did all of the recipes and stuff. It's amazing. Yeah. And then from there, if things have just really moved forward, I know it's been like more than 10 years now, yeah. Even just being on the online space. And then this is just sort of like the natural progression of what's happened. So just more time on the online space, more online programs, a little bit less time in the clinic. Yep. And yeah, that's pretty much, that.
Cool. What I love about, so if you go to Jillian's website, there's a lot of free programs that you've put together that, to me, it obviously you're such a professional, but it helps. I think if you're having a digestive issue, Jillian, you break it down into categories and you get people right into the education. So probably these are people that are already working with a local physician that has helped them to start to diagnose an issue, and they're trying to get their own education. What I really love about it too is that you have your business here in an online fashion. And to me, I think there is oftentimes less so with an integrative physician who has just a very different level of care. But I think with the primary care physician, I find that somebody might get a diagnosis or they might know what might be their issue, but then they don't know how to put things into practice for themselves. Yeah. And as somebody, I'm not a physician, but I find that I tend to be a liaison between like somebody's like office visit and their life. And I'm trying to help them, and I point them always back to a physician to get labs read and get things done through a physician. But it's really the practice that I think is really important in becoming educated in your own body.
Yes.
And as you guys always say, and I say you guys, the authors of Metabolic, or the creators of Metabolic Effect, you and Jade and Keone Teta, talking about how our physiology, we are so unique in our physiology, and trying to do a Google search doesn't always yield us amazing results.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so I really love, so if you want to, at the end of this, when you listeners, go to Jillian's website, and there's many different categories for how you might be able to start your own education into what might be troubling now.
Yes.
So let's talk about digestive health. So we're seeing, what were some of the trends that you were seeing in the clinic?
That's interesting. So I see a lot of constipation.
Okay.
Constipation is absolutely rampant, at least in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And also for like online clients and things like that. Yeah. But I think even something like constipation, you think, oh, well, I've always been constipated. It's no big deal. My mom was constipated. What I really enjoy doing is making the connection for folks that how something as seemingly simple as constipation can have ripple effects for the whole body. So most of us think of digestion, all right, like I put some food in my mouth and, a day later I poop it out. But our guts are so much more than just like the avenue through which we impart our nutrition. They are heavily involved in our neurological function. Our gut is heavily involved in our immune system. Like the vast majority of our immune system actually lives in specialized tissue in the GI tract. So it's extremely important for defense and the development or not of autoimmunity, and also our body's ability to detoxify. Our gut contains 2 of the big 5 organs for detoxification, right? The large intestine and the liver. And so all of these things make the gut, I call it like the grand central station of the body. So it's like digestive health is foundational. And if we think about something like constipation, right? So if we're constipated, us as women, our body releases estrogen, detoxifies estrogen via pooping it out. So if we're not pooping out our estrogen every day, we can have like relative estrogen dominance, which can lead to worsening PMS symptoms, acne, migraines, breast tenderness, hot flushes, all of these types of things. And so then we go to our gynecologist because we're having bad periods and we get put on birth control pills. We go to the neurologist because we're having migraines and we get put on like a triptan. We go to the dermatologist because we have acne and we get, an antibiotic or something. When really all we just need to like poop.
Right.
So it's like going back to that like very, very sort of base level. And then of that, like there's different layers to what makes good digestive function, right? Like you want to be eating food that is appropriate for you or for your condition, which looks differently for everybody and can even change within like lifetime, it changes obviously within our lifetime and life periods and such. Not only what we eat is important, but our ability to actually break it down, right? So do we have enough enzymes on board and like stomach acid and bile and this type of stuff? Is our microbiome healthy, right? Our microbiome is also heavily involved in defense and also hormonal balance and detoxification and the extraction and humanizing of nutrients from plants, right? And then, is our lining intact, right? Like, do we have a good like digestive lining, like small intestine lining, like top to bottom? And then to your point about the second brain, like, is that also balanced? So it's like there's all these little like nuances, places that we can look at for someone if they are having digestive distress. There's like lots of different categories that we can look at there.
What do you find when somebody comes to you talking about constipation? Maybe this is back in the clinic or even now. Do you find that, like, what are the main things that people are trying that are like off the shelf solutions where somebody's like, okay, so I'm constipated. I don't have regular bowel movements. I know this probably isn't normal. We don't know, somebody that doesn't know what all the effects that can have that domino effect down the road. What are some of the things that they're trying so someone that's listening right now can kind of put themselves in the shoes like, I've done that before.
Like things that they're trying that aren't working.
Yeah.
So like something like Benefiber, they'll be like, okay, I'm constipated, so my doctor told me to have more fiber. So now I'm eating these little like Benefiber bars. Well, those are like all insoluble fiber, right? So it's highly fermentable. And that if you're adding more fiber into a system that's either dry or not tolerating those fibers well, you're going to exacerbate symptoms. So I see people a lot eating like the wrong types of fiber.
Got it.
Or they'll do something like, we're just going to go for like a straight up laxative, right? Like Senna or something like that. And then you can get a dependency. You can get like a dependency there. So those I would say like are the two biggest mistakes that I see. And then the other piece, a huge component of constipation is just like simply stress. Like they're being woken up too early by these like really jarring alarm clocks. They have a very chaotic morning. They like barely make it to work on time. And then they sit on their butt like for, 8 to 10 hours. Often stressed, often not happy in their work, and then they like commute home for an hour and like, fight with their kids and their spouse until they go back to bed. And like, then the whole thing starts again. And like, for a lot of folks, that's really miserable. Yeah. And that impacts that stress we feel in our brain and our mental and emotional well-being is physically and physiologically connected to our guts.
Yeah, I love that. I coach the hormonal balance piece of specifically fat loss, but usually what tends to happen is there's the biofeedback of learning how to balance our hormones on a day-to-day and hour-to-hour basis and how that can help us manage our hunger and our cravings, and certainly the effect could be for fat loss. But then there's also the connection to psychology that I'm most interested in, and I feel like most of the time what I'm looking for after my programs is that my clients are walking away feeling like they've changed their relationship to food and exercise, whereas it's not an input to get just one solution or one effect of losing weight, but it's understanding how the process of trying to achieve hormonal balance actually helps their entire life.
Yeah, helps everything.
That's the powerful piece for me is like, oh, okay, so in order to achieve hormonal balance, I actually need to manage my stress. Like, I actually need to check myself and realize that I'm over exercising or that I don't need to actually exercise at all at first. I just need to figure out how to like get, even if I don't feel emotionally stressed out, I have to figure out how to check in with my physical stress and take care of that on a day-to-day basis. What are some of your, like, give the listeners like some of your tips, if you could, on how to how to check in and know that their body is physically stressed beyond constipation. And then what are some of the best ways to help balance stress?
So first, I guess we would learn how to actually identify what stress feels like in our own bodies. And for most people, that feels like a tightness or a constriction.
Okay.
You know, like that'd be like more of an anxious thing, like a tightness or a constriction in the chest, or an extremely hurried or flustered thought process.
Got it.
Right. So we all know someone who's like a little spacey or a little ditzy, and they're like, they open the door and they don't close it, and like they're just all over the place. Like this person probably is stressed out, even if they're not mentally aware of it. So it is entirely possible to experience stress without actually being consciously aware of it. And I would say that most of our stress is subconscious, because we're playing these tapes of our sort of dysfunctional thought patterns from the past, right? Like that foster that like that victim mindset that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So getting consciously in touch with like physical cues for stress is important.
Yep.
And then to de-stress, there's a couple big ones that I have. The most important is sleep. Like I really have people start guarding their sleep times, right? So this means like, no electronics, no bad news, like nothing super stimulating at bedtime, preferably not white light, blue light. And if you do blue light, like have the blue light blocking glasses. And then if you have poor quality of sleep, making sure that you're addressing that and however that looks, right?
Yeah.
And then having a little bit of time in the morning where you can like transition between like sleeping and waking rather than just like launching into stress. So sleep is the first part. I'm also a huge fan of orgasms, whether it's sex or masturbation. Orgasms are extremely de-stressing. They help balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So I'm a huge proponent of that, whether you masturbate or whether you have sex with someone. And then the third is, and you'll laugh because I always talk about this, is the daily walk, right? Is going for a daily walk, preferably outside, and like a slow walk, like a stroll, right? So you're not getting your spandex on and like Jane Fonda kind of a thing, like you are just like literally strolling. Yes, no, you don't need like ankle weights or anything. I take my dog and we just like stroll and we like look at the birds and like smell the flowers and stuff. So those three things are like the most powerful things for de-stressing, like activities you can do. And then always constantly doing that inner work, whether you're like working with a professional or like just reading a bunch of self-help books or working with a coach or what have you, but like just identifying those unconscious, subconscious dysfunctional patterns, which usually are some version of I'm not good enough or I'm not blank enough.
Right. It's those stories. It's those loops that automatic thinking is like, you're going through any sort of part of your day and you start to tell yourself the story of, oh yeah, this is why I don't get things done. Or, oh yeah, this is why I'm stuck here. And all of those patterns. I find that the walking is one of those things that I recommend to my clients. And all of a sudden it's one of those things that they don't implement until I catch that they haven't, right? It's kind of one of those things that seems, if we're let's talk about weight loss, because weight loss is particularly the way that women come to me. And if they're looking to achieve weight loss, we're always thinking about a calorie burn. And the calorie burn is really thinking about that like high intensity. Oh, I've got to be really sweaty with my exercise. So I think giving ourselves over to there being a benefit of like not actually like moving slowly. What are some of the ways? So we talked about constipation, but if you manage your stress, what other benefits can you get within your body, within how your body functions?
Well, you can just like be a better person to be around. Really improve the quality of your relationships, like every single one, including the one to yourself. But you are way less likely to develop virtually any like chronic health concern. You're going to have lower blood pressure. You're going to have lower resting levels of cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline, which in turn is going to help keep your estrogen and progesterone and thyroid balanced. And you're going to be more likely to have those appropriate intrinsic cues like hunger and energy and things like that. Like they'll be true, if that makes sense. Like they'll be more accurate when you are managing your stress. So there's really no like downside physiologically to managing stress. And stress, stress is one of those words where it's used so often it almost means nothing. And I'm not saying like all stress is bad. Like much of our stress is compensatory and is, through evolution has helped us be so successful as a species. Sure. And it's very important for us to survive, right? So it's not that like all stress is bad and we're trying to like foster a like 100% like stress-free zone. It's all about how you relate to stress and how you relate to your thoughts about what stress you out.
Right.
So I want to say that too, like, it's not about eliminating stressors because that's literally never going to happen. Yeah. It's virtually impossible. Yeah. So how do we like swerve with them? Like how do we handle them and how do we move forward from those stressors?
Oh, I like that a lot. Stress, cortisol, like those are some of the things that people are like, cortisol in particular and insulin, cortisol and insulin. People are like, insulin is bad and cortisol is bad. And it's like, these are actually useful hormones. Yeah. Many things in our body. Mm-hmm. And we just need to kind of learn to go with the seasons. What would you, and cortisol in particular as a strength coach too, mm-hmm. where, I just had women in my garage doing powerlifting. We are doing our warm-up sets. We're slowly warming up to our heavy sets. These women are going to be competing next weekend. And it's like, we are slowly warming up the central nervous system, right? Mm-hmm. Getting the central nervous system ready for the load that's coming at it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's almost what happens in our day-to-day lives. When I have stress with my kids, stress does make us better. Stress allows us to rise up and to level up. And mm-hmm. All of the hormones that come along with elevated cortisol in the short term, right, help us to get ready for what's coming. Yeah. But I think we live our lives, right, where especially in modern times, we live our lives where like everything is high stress. So mm-hmm. then there's just this chronic stress across the board that then, mm-hmm. Gives us all of these challenges to, outwardly when we're trying to change our aesthetic, to lose weight, to have our metabolism in balance, to ask our body, like it's almost for me just telling the body like it's okay. Trying to manage that. Yeah. So Jillian goes on walks every day, and you're so good at taking your Instagram stories along with you. Yeah. And I love I wasn't into gardening until last season, so I will be more into your gardening stories this season as I look to plant and make my yard nice. But the daily walks are really important. But what I love about some things you say on your website is that we go through seasons. Like there are seasons, and you're very keen personally, and this is why you do this work, and it's natural for you to do this work on the seasons of our body too. Yep. So is there a way that you might be able to describe that to the listeners? Because I think a lot of people, and I keep bringing it back to fat loss, but a lot of people think they can always be in a fat loss mode, and that they're always kind of in go mode where they're trying to do one thing. How can someone understand the seasons of our metabolism and even how the body goes through changes and cycles?
It ebbs and flows, right? So I guess a very intuitive way for women to understand, one cycle would be your menstrual cycle, right? You can change your training and nutrition based on your menstrual cycle and acknowledging, if you're someone who gets PMS or before your cycle, you get irritable or down or whatever, it's almost like letting yourself have that and kind of building other things around that. Yeah. Another season would be something like pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So the types of foods that you eat may not be exactly the types of foods you eat when you're not pregnant. Mm-hmm. You're going to train a little bit differently. And it's the same with menopause. As we lose the help of estrogen and progesterone, how do we then compensate using nutrition and lifestyle and exercise to mimic that hormonal environment? So those are sort of very broad frameworks, but then also something on a more granular scale is maybe our creative process, where if you're someone and you have a project at work, there's definitely a sequence of incubating the idea, mm-hmm. working on it furiously, and then launching it and bringing it out into the world. And then I think after that, there's definitely a dip and a downtime after that. For me, there is. Yeah. So, I'm in the middle of this right now where I'm getting ready for De-Stress Your Gut Academy. So right now I'm very busy. I'm pulling lots of things together. Yeah. After it launches, I'm going to go in this dip. And I know it's coming. I allow for it to happen now. Yeah. So those types of things, just again, checking in with yourself and allowing yourself to have those spaces is mm-hmm. extremely important. even the highest functioning, highest performing people are not on 100% of the time.
Right.
You know, and if you get that impression from them, it's an inauthentic one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
and it's so easy with social media to feel like if we're in business for ourselves, if we're entrepreneurs, even I talk in the Be Powerful podcast on Thursdays, I come out with the Mom Minute, and it's a 15-minute podcast that's all for moms and helping moms to navigate the feelings of motherhood. I'm a big proponent of moms being able to feel like they can do something outside of being a mom. That's for themselves and not feeling the guilt around that. And so for me, that's also a little bit of a cycle too.
Absolutely.
Where in the summertime, I'm already starting to plan for how I'm going to be able to spend more time with my kids during the week and work a little bit less, which is oftentimes hard for me. On many different strengths finder type profiles, I'm an achiever, and achievers like to be busy.
Yeah.
So achievers really like to always be, like, the best job for me in my 20s was being a server. I loved micromanaging. I loved the high stress. And so we are used to that. And we think that on social media, we see people grinding. Yeah. And all we see is grinding, you know? Yeah. And so we see all of the fruits of their labor, but we don't see that downtime that they have. Right. And it's funny, this whole conversation keeps coming back to that like ability to kind of chill and be in the moment, instead of the anxiety over what am I working on next?
Yep.
What's going to happen next? So like, tell me what do you plan for yourself with like after is there a rhyme and reason for how you go about your downtime, or do you just let it flow?
No, there's really not. I mean, I basically just don't have anything scheduled and I just let myself lounge around. I do, I'll sleep in, I'll spend 5 hours sitting at the kitchen table, like with coffee, reading a book. Like I don't have anything on the books. It's very unstructured.
Are you the type of personality that like, do you ever get anxious within that? Or do you just kind of like, how would you check yourself if that feels a little too lazy?
Well, so I still do all of like my daily postings and like I do that stuff. I'll still do that, but I really do let myself just like disengage. I let my brain just disengage. I'm more of a type B personality than a type A personality. So maybe it's slightly easier for me to like let go. Like once I have finished that, it's now it's time to rest. Right. And then when I'm ready again, I ramp back up again. So I really allow myself to have that.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's very common to seek out efficiency in every area of our lives. And we think, okay, once I get this efficiency, I'm going to do the same thing every single day forever. Mm-hmm. And once the cycle, and this is what I see with the yo-yo diet type of culture, is if we think that we've found something that if we don't know that there's a cycle happening, right? Mm-hmm. And I talk about this with like attain and maintain phases of fat loss, right? And it's like, you can't be in attain phase forever. You have to, psychologically, you have to come out of it, but your metabolism wants a reset too.
Yep.
Your metabolism wants to be maintaining your weight and just kind of like, right? And maybe you cycle your training at that point. But I think that it's very common to try and seek this like, oh, if I'm a marathoner, I'm going to be a marathoner forever. And then we're frustrated with ourselves when 2 or 3 marathons a year become 1 or become 2 or whatever. How would you explain kind of like allowing yourself to, when you start a plan, allowing yourself to be on a cycle without it being a forever fix?
Yeah.
Like, can it be like an experiment? Can it be like like plan for yourself to just kind of like see how it goes, but not expect it to be the forever solution?
Yeah. So like having, being like open to outcome, but not attached to outcome, I think is something that's very hard, but can be very useful because it allows us to experience like a broad array of like possibilities, but also understanding that like part of that high performance and high achievement and that productivity is also the downtime. It's just the yin to the yang, it's just like the other side of the coin. You need both, just like you need your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. You need cortisol and you need insulin. It's like we need all of these things. And anytime we go too far in one way, I think that's where like the detriments occur. Like certainly you can relax too much. I don't know, you can like relax too much. I don't know, become like whatever, like a major pothead and just like lay around all day, like, you know, I don't know, like reading trashy novels, like that would get pretty old. Like that would get too much also.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So you need that balance. You really need both.
Mm-hmm.
To go up, you need to come down a little bit. To go down, you need to go up a little bit.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I think there's so much mindset. There's much more mindset involved and this is why the podcast exists, because there's so much more mindset involved than people initially think when they're going on, like, I'm going to start again on Monday type of plans or even on their training cycles. And we think that there's like, it's all about drive. It's all about needing to find the willpower. It's, I just haven't found the thing for me yet because I haven't been able to commit. And part of that process that I see is that there's a shame cycle built into it, where if we're not setting ourselves up for the fact that there is an eventual rest, then we get ourselves to the point where we feel like, or we have to. Like what I actually recognized was that my training was going through cycles, and I didn't realize it until I was all of a sudden a coach, and I was coaching what I had done for years, and I realized that even the type of exercise, like short, intense exercise, my body needed rest from it every once in a while. And I noticed that I was going on like 2 weeks of rest every 8-week cycle. And I was like, that's so interesting to me, because I was reading it as I'm super lazy. Like, or why do I go through this pattern of like, you know, I get so busy and I need to focus on other things and not my fitness. And I always bring that up when I'm talking to my clients, because it's like, if you start to notice cycles like that, if you're getting to be more aware, you realize that actually my body was kind of forcing me into that. And it wasn't necessarily that the willpower wasn't there. It was just that like I needed a rest, you know?
Yeah, you weren't being lazy. It was just you needed a little bit of downtime from that.
Exactly. And I think it was the mental rest. It was less about the physical rest, because that I can handle a 20-minute workout. If you like get me out of my sleep, I could just be like, oh, okay, I'll go do it. But it was more like my mind needed that schedule rest too. I love it. Okay. So back to digestion for a little bit, I was hoping that you could share with us. So a lot of times I hear from people that go on like the Whole30. And they're going on the Whole30, not necessarily for the digestive work around it. However, there is great like elimination pieces to the Whole30. Full disclosure, I've talked about this before. I have not read through that whole plan. I don't do it, but I can sense that that's what the goal of it. So what people do is they go on this plan and they come right off of it and they go back to eating everything that they ate. It can feel overwhelming. If we think that we know something is bothering us within our gut, maybe we're constipated, maybe we are always gassy, maybe we know that our immunity is off and we know that has something to do with our gut. If we're overwhelmed with the process of doing an elimination diet, because say we might be people that just don't do well abstaining from certain foods, what's a way that we can look at going down that road and starting to do the work?
Yeah. Well, so I think it's really important that we always meet folks where they're at. Okay. So if someone is not able to launch into a full Whole30, which is just, it's a very broad elimination diet. So it does offer us the opportunity, a very unique opportunity, to see what foods do what to us and to our bodies. So that's interesting, but the volume of elimination can feel overwhelming. So if you do fall into that category where like it is too much, then I would say, well, what's not too much? Could you maybe like take stock of your diet? I do this a lot with folks when we're face to face. What are like the big things that could be potentially problematic that you're eating a lot? And usually it's wheat, or it's dairy products, or it's just like sugar. So it's like, could we do an elimination of just one of those things and see what happens? Like starting a little bit smaller.
Love it.
Some folks, and Melissa Hartwig has talked about this, like sometimes you need to do the whole thing at once and you just like need to, and that's what you need to do. But she also recognizes that a lot of people aren't ready for that. And so that does go back to like, I guess, the mindset piece, but also we do have to just meet folks where they are simply. So that would be what I'd say. Like if you can't do a Whole30, like can you do a 4-week elimination of wheat? Could you do a 4-week elimination of white sugar? And then once you get that little, that little piece under your belt, then you're more likely to be like, okay, well, yeah, I actually do feel better. So maybe I'm going to try something more, or maybe it was that wheat was the issue for me.
Sure.
Sometimes with eliminating everything is that most folks are only sensitive to like a couple, like one or two things, right? So it's like, we don't always need to cast such a broad net to find it. So I tend to go after what I call the big bullies more, which are things like, again, wheat, dairy, legumes, those types of things.
Okay. And so when you're cutting out those types of foods, how long does it necessarily take for you to start to see the results from it? Because I know, inflammatory foods or foods that we have some sort of allergen on the body could take a couple of weeks to be fully eliminated.
So I depending on people's level of motivation, I think 2 to 6 weeks. At 4 weeks is really like a benchmark. I would think is like a bare minimum.
Yeah.
For little kids and for babies, it's shorter. I think just because they're younger, there's like less, I don't know, like physical history there with them. There's less like metabolic dysfunction present. So these things can be unmasked a little bit faster. But for adults, I think about 4 weeks is really good. Sometimes longer too.
Yeah. Okay. And so, talk about the Fix Your Digestion a little bit. Tell us what the program aims to help you achieve.
Well, so Fix Your Digestion is sort of like a very broad, it's my signature program that is addressing, nutrition, digestive fire, the microbiome, intestinal lining, and it is simply to eradicate a broad array of digestive symptoms. So it's very much like my most general program that's out there. And I'm actually going to be taking it off ClickBank because ClickBank is screwing up my, like, getting people in there. But my other programs are all extremely specific. Like I have one for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I have one for colitis. I have one for gallbladder and liver problems. So they all aim essentially to reduce symptoms so that people can engage with their life. Like they can re-engage with their life.
And maybe through that process, do they discover that one of those other programs is like the next possible step for them?
Sometimes, yes. And I also try to teach tuning into those intrinsic cues, whether they're physical, emotional, or mental, again, because of that real intimate connection between like the gut and the brain. Our brain here and our second brain, a lot of that distress comes from that.
Totally.
Sometimes it's a wheat allergy, sometimes it's really simple. Like, you're sensitive to wheat and you want to just cut it out for a few months, or like you just need a probiotic because you've had multiple rounds of antibiotics and it blew out your good gut flora. Sometimes it's very fast and easy. Sometimes it's a little more complicated and nuanced. So hopefully my programs teach people like frameworks that they can work themselves without always having to have me or a doctor or a coach there. It's like teaching them how to work it themselves. Which to me is invaluable, because it's like, if you can teach someone to do something, like they have no, they're autonomous,
Totally.
And I really value autonomy. That's one of my like big value systems. So
of course
I try to promote that in my programs.
I love that. And they're making choices for themselves. They're being their own boss. They're figuring out and when things crop up, because they've done the work of learning your systems and knowing what to look for with that feedback, knowing what step to take. And that to me is one of the most powerful processes of learning how to balance your hormones. I just recorded an episode on hormonal balance and why it's even a thing and why someone should consider it, because most of the time we're, so-and-so lost 20 pounds on keto. Oh gosh, I've got to try keto. And I talked about the difference between health and hormone balance, or health and fat loss, because they're not always the same thing.
No.
But also just learning how to cue into your body, learning how like one person's triggers are not the same. One person's like buffers are not the same as another person, and just how individualized it can be. It's really powerful to then be able to make choices for yourself and feel like you're no longer a slave to a diet book or waiting for the next thing that's coming out on the diet market.
Yes. No, it's cause and effect. It's like you're teaching a child, right? I know you try to teach your boys that, like, how do these foods make you feel? And it's like, once you learn that, you can make a more informed choice. Sometimes you might go for the 3 cupcakes and that's fine, but at least the consequence, right? Versus like walking around kind of like always not feeling well, but not knowing exactly why. Kind of going back and doing something like an elimination challenge diet will help explicitly show you that cause and effect.
I love that.
So you can have just so you can be more fully informed with your choices, because you're not always going to make a better choice, because sometimes you might want whatever, the mac and cheese or the pizza, or like, I don't know, 3 pints of beer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not, just because you have that information doesn't mean you're always going to make the choice that's going to make you feel your best. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And I feel like it might be, you may get this too, but when I go out to like happy hours or social events, sometimes when people know what I do, they think that I'm, number one, judging what they're eating, which they learn that I'm not. But number two, I'm always going to be making like this like perfect, choice. Right. And sometimes I decide to have the margarita with all the damn sugar and sour stuff and the stuff that makes me feel like crap. But it's an informed decision. And it's, I was talking on a call last night with my Metabolic Reset crew, and I was saying that just because I have all the information doesn't mean that I'm not going to make a choice like, hey, I'm going to have some birthday cake of my kids. Usually it wouldn't be that choice. Or I'm going to have some gummy candy, and I'm going to have all of the dyes, and I'm going to have things that I know aren't good for me.
Yep.
But I also know how not to make that a long journey into the bin direction. Right.
Yes.
And so it's like, you can't do a framework like this where you're learning how to cue into yourself and not have that information forever to be able to use and be autonomous, like you said, and to have the self-efficacy to be able to be like, I don't have to do somebody's all-in plan.
Right.
I can make this up for myself. I can go through and create my own way of eating. That's going to make me feel good and get whatever results I'm working for. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. So your Fix Your Digestion comes out when?
Well, so Fix Your Digestion is always on my website. That's
there.
Like my signature program. De-Stress Your Gut Academy is opening April 8th.
Okay.
And then on my website, jillianteta.com, under the free resources tab, there are 12 or something like free educational sequences that are most of them are video based. They're in my online classroom, and that is always available.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So do you still practice in the clinic, or are you doing all of it?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm at the clinic about 4 hours a week. And that's pretty nice. I get to see like exactly who I want to see. I'm very selective about like taking on new people, and I don't know, it's just been really great. I have like you have like your boundaries there. Like, this is email, like you understand, like as a, working any business, like you need to have your boundaries in place, and it's great. We enjoy it.
That's awesome. So what are you looking forward to in the spring? So you have all your gardening all set up?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I was just up in Massachusetts a couple of weeks ago, and God, you guys are still covered in snow.
I know. It's warm. It's warm this week.
It was warming up. Okay.
And my son was home from daycare, because everybody has a stomach bug around here. And he was home from daycare, and we were just like out on the porch having lunch, and we thought it was like glorious. It's all relative this time of year, but we will go into, I live right by the ocean, so we'll get into
Well, so right now it's blooming. We've got the tulips are coming up. All the daffodils are up. The crocuses are up. My snowball plant is waking up. The peonies are waking up. My kiwi is waking up. So like everything's kind of waking up, and it's, it's pretty nice here now. It's pretty nice. I don't think we're going to get any more snow this year.
That's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, you have to follow Jillian on Instagram, because honestly, I love the quick lessons that you put out on Instagram stories, and you take the time, which I really appreciate, to write text over your Instagram stories, because sometimes it can feel like a lot of information, even as someone who has studied hormones and coached hormones for a couple of years. I think that it can feel overwhelming. Understanding our body is so complex, but it's also, you break it down in a way that makes it seem so easy to understand. And so Jillian also often goes off on, you'll be talking about colitis one day, or you'll be talking about SIBO on another day. And I think it's a really nice way for people to get the introduction into how to, like, what steps to even take. And not make it feel so overwhelming, where it's like kind of like all of this like medical terms on a page. I
really try to not, because the sciencey stuff is super boring. Like, I do try to just make it very easy to digest for people, because it's really not. I mean, the body's complex, but like, it's also not that complex. Like, there's definitely ways to talk about it that are not complex. And I don't ever have the need to like try to talk over anybody's level of understanding. I always try to break it down. Like, how would I explain this to like a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
Like,
And we need to hear it over and over and over again too. I think some of the times we get stuck in our patterns of our lives, and we know, like, I'm sure you see this all the time. We know what's making us feel poor and feel badly, but we keep doing it because what's easier is doing the thing that we know versus kind of doing something new. And I can fall into that too with my business, the way I run my business. Like, I know that I'm spending time on things that I could probably have somebody do for me. It's kind of like, we like to know what's going to happen. So the outcomes that we know about, even if they're not ideal. So sometimes just being able to break it down into the easy steps makes it more approachable, and it makes us be able to be like, you know what, I can make those positive changes, and I can, do it one at a time, take it one thing at a time, work on something at a time, and see the effects. I love that. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I so appreciate it. You're one of my first guests, girlfriend.
I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm excited for you. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
For you.
Thank
you so much for having me be one of your first guests.
Of course. So tell us where everyone can follow you.
So my website is jillianteta.com. And from there, you can get all my social media and all the free programs, my book, everything is on there. And on Instagram, my handle is Jillian Teta.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jess.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.